Hey everyone! Look, I know it has been quite a while since we've done some Unimog video around here, but as some of you may know, I've just had a lot of other stuff going on as well. But I must admit that ever since I got rid of that old Unimog 404 I had sitting here for a while, I do feel like I've been a little bit short on Unimog projects, so I think we should see if we can find another one. And I know exactly where to look. So let's get the old McGears fired up and get ready to go and take a look at this thing. It's been quite a few weeks since I've had this guy fired up, and it is a bit cold this afternoon, so let's see how it does. We're just gonna let this sit here and warm up for a bit. Oh yeah, and I still don't have the sides on the bed. I just haven't really had any good reason to struggle with putting those things back on. I have been thinking about it and have some solutions in mind for this, but we're gonna talk more about that some other time. I would have been really cool to put a Unimog up on the bed of this thing. I would love to see that. But unfortunately, the one we're going to look at, it just won't fit up here. Had this bed been like just 10-20 centimeters longer, something like that, we might have been able to pull it off, but it just won't fit as it is. So we're gonna have to bring the trailer. Yes, I know, I should get a bigger trailer for this truck. And I am looking for one, but there's just not that many to find because it has to meet quite a few criteria. First of all, it has to be a specific type, kind of like this one, just a bit bigger, but not too big because we still have to be within a certain weight category. And also, it has to be of a certain age, and lastly, it has to be in my budget. So there's just not a whole lot to find, and for now, I'm gonna have to make do with this, but it should be fine for this. The truck we're going to look at, it is partially disassembled. There's some stuff that is not there, so in terms of weight, we should be right at the limit of what I can legally carry on this. But with that, we should be ready to go. Now, it is a bit of a drive to get there, so I'm gonna be heading out tomorrow morning. Alright people, here it is. A rusty Unimog 416. But before we start messing with this, check this one out. The seller also has this other beautiful Unimog 416. But this one is a so-called Doka, short for double cabine. There's not many of these things around, especially in this country, and this one was originally from Norway, where it was an emergency vehicle. Now, let's get back to this. And we're just gonna get this thing loaded up and bring it home, and then we can talk some more about it when we get there. Now, trouble is, I couldn't get the McGee's all the way up here to his workshop, so we have to drag this down a little windy road to get there. But first we just have to get it out of the way, and then we can use the big Doka. You can't really tell from this camera angle, but this part of the road was pretty steep downhill, and the old rusty Unimog doesn't have any brakes, so we didn't want to risk that thing rolling away and hitting the back of the Doka, so we decided to just push it over the edge and let it roll itself down. Alright people, so as per usual, we arrived back home in the dark. It's not even terribly late, it's just that time of year, but regardless, I can't see what I'm doing, so I'm gonna leave this stuff parked here overnight, and then tomorrow we can unload this thing and check out what we got. Well, now that I've had a chance to sleep on it, I'm starting to realize what I've done. So let's just start with the thing that some of you are no doubt wondering, which is, why did I get this? It's not like I needed another Unimog project. Well, at least not right now, when I'm just about to start rebuilding my workshop so that I can actually get on with some of my projects. So the thing is, I have known about this vehicle for quite some time. I also got to see it in person a few years ago. And back when I saw it, this was just sitting outside under a tarp. This thing hasn't been running and driving for years. But there was a plan for this vehicle. Back when I saw it, the guy was in the middle of restoring a double cab, and the plan was to fix up the lower half of this vehicle and then put that double cab on here. But as it sometimes happens, life kind of got in the way and the project wasn't really progressing as fast as he'd like, and eventually he just ended up buying that really nice red dough cab that we saw over there. And with that, this thing just ended up, once again, just sitting around. And I know he has been trying to sell this thing for some time, and I've kind of had to hold myself back because even though I wanted it, I didn't really need it, but apparently neither did anyone else because there really weren't any takers. And eventually he started talking about maybe just parting this out, taking some stuff off, and essentially just scrap it. And I just thought that that would be a crying shame because I did see the potential in this. So I ended up writing him saying, you know, let me come and take a look at this thing, see if we can work something out, and here we are. So in my mind, this was sort of a rescue mission. Bringing it here was a way to keep this thing alive and keep it from being scrapped. Although that still remains to be seen because I still haven't really even taken a closer look at this thing, so it might just be a dud, but we'll find out. I'm optimistic about it. So this thing is a Unimog 416-115, but the age of it is not entirely certain. We believe it is a 77 or a 78, but unfortunately the data plaque is gone, so that's going to need a little more investigation. But it is certainly a little bit newer than my other 416, which is from 1975. And that also means that, even though it might not look like it, this is actually the newest Unimog that I've taken ownership of. So I've been told that the last job this machine had was at a steel plant, where this was pretty much just used as a little mobile crane. You can still see the remnants of that big crane mount that was on it. It's just been cut off with the gas axe there, but this would have been a little crane truck. And that might also explain this. That's a little bit weird. They've welded these tabs onto the wheels. That's typically something you only see on tractors. It's so that you can put dualies on it. You put another wheel on the outside of this. And there's some rods that come through and lock into these notches here. I've never seen that on a Unimog. It's also had something mounted out here in the front because they cut out a good chunk of this front bumper. Something PTO driven because they've extended that rather than the original mount in there. Oh. That's also very stiff in the other end. Let's not turn that on, that's going to cause some havoc. The gearbox looks a little bit interesting because the gearbox itself is a different color from these other bits attached to it. So I suspect that it's been getting a new or at least rebuilt gearbox at some point in its life. Also, this is where we can tell that this is a slightly later model than my other 416 because there's a lot more air-actuated stuff on this. Also, just notice that this has a lever down here. That's not something you can get to when you're driving. It seems to be part of the PTO. I wonder if this is a 2-speed PTO and this is for shifting that. I've never seen that before. That's a bit weird. Not really sure what they've had going on with that PTO shaft. I'm probably just going to have to take that off. Well, I will because it's seized up anyway. Do have a new slave cylinder for the clutch on there for some reason. And here's another clue that this is slightly newer than my other Unimogs because this actually has a sway bar on the rear. That might just fall off. We'll see. Oh, and one more thing that we find on these newer models. Disc brakes. You know, fun fact, the Unimogs were some of the very first heavy vehicles to get full disc brakes all the way around. Yeah, that doesn't really smell right. Not sure we should be running it on whatever's in here. But actually the tank itself is looking quite decent. Typically they are really rusty right along that seam there, but this seems to be pretty good. Don't see any wet spots on it. Nice. But speaking of rust, let's get to the main issue with this vehicle. There's even stuff that has fallen off when we were driving home. Wait, I know exactly what that is. That goes right here. The cab on this thing is, unfortunately, as it happens to many Unimogs, it is really badly rusted. I even had to put a strap around it for the drive home so the doors wouldn't fall off, because they are barely hanging in there and they're not lining up at all, so you can't close them properly. And that very rusty cab really does seem to be the biggest issue with this vehicle. Or so I hope, because I still haven't seen if this thing will drive or if the engine will even fire up. So let's go ahead and get it down from here, get it inside, and see if we can spring some life into it. I suppose technically we don't really even need the ramps. It has plenty of clearance to just drive off the edge. But I still want to do this a little controlled. Not sure if this is even rolling freely enough to just roll itself down from here. Right, well, let's see if it'll do this. Not by itself. Oh, that's gonna steer the wrong way. Let me just unlock the door. It's not rolling that easy. Come on. Smooth. Now you can even get a little sneak peek on this guy. It is still being worked on, don't worry. Well, unfortunately, the part of the bumper that's missing, that's the part that would have had the hitch on it. Well, let's just see if we can do something else here. Yeah, that might work. It's going to be a lot of back and forth to steer this thing. Alrighty, so now that we've made it this far, the very first thing I would like to do is to see if we can get this engine going. So these are equipped with an OM352, and in my opinion, that is a fantastic engine. Let's see if we can get a reading on this. It's a bit misaligned, but it looks like 3924, so 3,000, almost 4,000 hours. Not great, not terrible, it'll be fine. Well, now that we are looking at numbers, I do think this has a bit of kilometers on it as well. Yeah, 160,000 kilometers. That's quite a bit of driving in a Unimog. Don't even think I've filmed in here just yet, but it looks about as terrible on the inside as it does on the outside, this cab. But I am still quite confident in this old 352 because they are just really solid engines. And also, even though this hasn't been running for years, it hasn't been several decades like some of the other stuff that we've been trying. But before we just start cranking it, there is a few things I would like to do. And first off, I would like to make sure that it turns. Well, this has a plastic fan. I don't want to pull on that too much. Let's just see if we can get a hold of the clutch flywheel assembly up there. Yeah, I think we can get something in there, try to turn this. I can't really get you guys in here to film what I'm doing, but just trying to grab onto this edge of the clutch. Although there's not a whole lot to grab onto. Oh yeah. All right, I've been turning this thing for a bit. Not quite a full revolution. It's not very easy to grab a hold of it down there, and not really easy to feel anything either, but it's enough to know that it isn't obstructed, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now, before I just throw some batteries on this and start cranking it, I would really like to put some fresh oil in it, because we don't know the service history of this, and the guy I got it from has not been changing any fluids on this, so whatever's in there is no doubt some really old stuff. And again, I am quite confident that this engine is going to be all right, or at the very least salvageable, so there's no reason to hurt it unnecessarily. Let's just start by getting out whatever's in here. If there is anything in here. I haven't pulled the dipstick, so for all I know, it could be completely empty. Or full of water. Please be oil. Oh yeah. It just looks like old diesel engine oil. There's nothing alarming. Well, now we're doing this anyway. Let's just get this filter off. This has been lined up so that it'll drain right down onto the spring mount. I was kind of expecting this to have a newer type of filter rather than these old canisters, but that just makes it much easier because I already had one on the shelf. And here is the part number of that if you happen to be looking for one of these. Right on. Should be a cap in the valve cover. Oh yeah. There's a lot of dirt around that. I don't really want that in there. Hold on, let me get some air. Nice. This should take about 11 liters, and the first 10 of them just go right in here. Now the last liter goes down here through this plug into the filter housing to prime that. Oh, wow, that was tight. just a tad above the full mark. That'll be all right. Now that we are in here, let's just see if we have any water in this thing. Well, there is something in there. Good enough. And also, over here on the other side, just want to make sure we have some power steering fluid. We do. There is something in there. I'm not going to change it. I just want to make sure we don't run that pump dry. That is the cap for one of the shifters on the transmission. Is that missing? Well, no, it's not missing. It's this thing right here. It's just been extended for some reason. It was just supposed to be this little cap on there. Don't really know what that's all about. It looks kind of homemade, has some threaded holes in it and stuff. You know what, we'll worry about that some other time. All right, so technically we should do an oil change on the air filter as well, because this is an oil bath type filter. Normally I wouldn't be too concerned with that, but this one has been left open up here to this hole where the snorkel should have been, so it may have been getting water down through there. So let's just open it up, see how it looks. We just have to take the bottom off and we get to that through the wheel arch down here. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's water. A lot of it. That would not have been too good to suck that into the engine. Now we're getting some lumpy oil out of that. This should have just been regular engine oil. This is really thick. Right, so yeah, just a regular engine oil in this. It takes about 1.5 liters, maybe a little more. And ideally, I should try not to drop this as I put it back up here. Right, that is air sorted out, oil is changed, the water is there, so now we just need some fuel. You know, honestly, this looks remarkably good on the inside. Well, not the fuel, but the tank itself. It's not rusty or nasty at all. That looks really clean. You know, I bet if we drain out the murky stuff that's in there, we can run this thing off the original tank. That would be a lot easier. I mean, it still looks like diesel. Just doesn't smell like it anymore. Let's give this some nice fresh stuff. I did just try to wash the tank out a bit with some brake clean because it still had a lot of this lumpy dark snot in there, so I suspect we've had some algae growth in this thing. So I'm also going to give it a little bit of additive to kill off that stuff, just for good measure. Right, but with that, the last thing I want to do is just to give this thing a set of fresh fuel filters, and then we can give it a try. Curious what these are going to look like. Not great. Oh yeah. Yeah, we've definitely had some stuff growing in that diesel. Nasty. Well, this also looks pretty terrible. Yeah, it's a good thing we're getting these out. Well, that's got me curious to just check out this little pre-filter. If I can get it off. All right, here we go. Yeah, that's also pretty nasty, but really not as bad as I feared. Right, so now we can get this back together. Now this is a dual filter setup, so it comes from the tank through the lift pump and up into this first filter. That is a coarse filter, and it moves right into the next one, which is a fine filter, before going down to the injection pump. This one actually just had 2 of the fine filters in it. I've done that a few times as well if I couldn't get one of each. But this time I do have one of each. So this one is the coarse filter. That's the one that goes in the first chamber. Got a number on that. And this here is the fine filter that's going in the next chamber, with the number for that as well. You're going to want to put the fine filter in first, because it's easier to get to now, before we put the other one in place. And the coarse filter. All right. Now, let's see if we can get the air out of this so we can finally give this a try. Here's hoping this pump is going to work. Yeah, I don't think this pump is working. I've been trying for a good while. It's not that far to the tank. It usually doesn't take very long to get it up here. And it looks like it's just started leaking. These pumps are not the greatest. You can get a brass version, they are a whole lot better, but I'm not sure I have one. Let me just go and check. I got one, and it's even one of the brass models, and I definitely didn't just steal it off that one. There's a lot of things you get to through these wheel arches. Right, let's try that. Feels like this is pumping now. Oh yeah, here we go. Right, that's both of them. Very nice. I think we're finally ready to try and put some power to this thing. I'm not entirely sure, but I think this is a 12 volt. It was typically only the old military vehicles that were 24, so we're just going to start with 12. Well, for some reason one of the rear lights came on, but other than that, nothing caught fire or exploded. So far so good. Now let's give this thing a try. Well, I've just discovered that my throttle pedal is completely seized. Might want to try and free that up. Also, someone has broken the handle off the hand throttle up here. Kind of unfortunate. We sort of needed that to keep the engine on. I can still get to the linkage down here and just use my hand to move it and give it some throttle. That'll work for the first startup. Luckily, it's not stuck back here. Sometimes they get stuck right here where they run through the back of the engine. That's a bit of a pain, but it seems all the linkage here is good. It's just the parts up here in the cab that are kind of seized up. Anyway, we're just going to work it here for now. See if we have any ignition. Ooh, we do. We even have functioning headlights. Wow, that's the first Unimog I've got with functioning headlights. Right. Well, I guess there's nothing else to it. Let's give this a try. Well, it does turn. That's good news. And it even did a slight cough at one point. So I think we just need a bit of fuel, and I'm sure this is going to go. Right. Let's try this again. It seems this battery didn't have as much of a charge as I thought, so let's just double up on that. Well, it is trying to burn something. We can smell it in the air in here. But my buddy has showed up to watch the show, so I'm gonna have him pump on that hand pump while I try to crank the starter and give it some throttle. I feel like we still have some air in this fuel system. Also, when I took off the fuel filters, there was no fuel in them, so I'm pretty sure we had a large air pocket in there, and some of it might be trapped in the pump. So I'm gonna see if I can crack loose some of these injector lines and just try to bleed that out. They're not super easy to get to, but if we can just get it going on a couple of them, it should do the trick. Well, we're not getting anything out of these two, but it did sound like it was trying to fire up, so let's just keep going. Well, somehow it did that with these still being open. Only one of them started getting a little bit wet, so let's just close that off and try it again. Well, we are running. I'm very pleased with that, but I do have a feeling that our lift pump is not quite doing its job, because it seems every time we fire it up and run it for a few seconds, I have to reprime it with the hand pump, and then we can go for another few seconds. So I don't think the pump is lifting anything up here by itself. Well, it's doing more and more each time. Now we got some diesel out of this last one. So let's tighten that back up. Success! It is getting a bit smoky in here, but don't worry, the door is open. Even though the hand throttle is broken, I managed to push the pedal down far enough to hold this high idle. There we go. Man, that was really nice, seeing and hearing this thing running on its own like that. Seems like it's running great. I still suspect that the lift pump might have been sticking for some time. I could almost see when it started working because it was almost dying out on one of those last attempts, and suddenly it just picked back up and it started shooting fuel out of this last injector line. So something happened and it's just been running from there. And the compressor just started building up air pressure right away. Also heard the relief opening, so that seems to be all good. And we had plenty of oil pressure, although I'm not sure we can trust that old gauge in there. But I did notice the first few times we were cranking it, it was just slowly building pressure. So I'm pretty confident it is there. So you know what that means. Now we gotta see if this thing will drive. But I have been told by the seller that the clutch might be sticking on this thing. So that might get a little bit interesting, because in order to try and break that free, we're gonna have to start it up in gear. But it was not super easy to shut it down. So if it starts driving off, it might be a bit difficult to actually stop it. So I'm gonna stack some things in front of the wheels, some wooden blocks and stuff, just to create some resistance to try and keep this thing under control. But we're gonna fire it back up, and I'm just gonna see if I can even get it into gear. If not, that clutch probably is stuck. And I know it is just going to drive over those blocks if it wants to. It's just to give it a little bit more rolling resistance. Bit of a rolling idle this time. Kind of funny, my other 416 does the exact same thing. There we go. Now I'm just gonna try and see if I can get this thing into gear, and well, we'll see what happens. So that should be forward, high range. I don't know if that's a gear, maybe? It did something. Yes! It is moving and the clutch works. Oh yeah. Neutral? Yep. Nice. We can take this for a drive. But we're gonna wait with that drive till tomorrow because it's completely dark outside. Before we go and give this a try, I just want to see if I can loosen up this throttle pedal a little bit more. That would make it a lot easier to drive. I did get it to move a little bit yesterday, so I'm hoping that some lubrication and a little bit of massage might make it better. Oh, that's already helping. Nice. Well, it's not great, but it's better. It should be good enough. We're not gonna start doing any kind of crazy driving because I still don't have any brakes on this. Oh, and by the way, here is why we don't have any brakes. The lines have just rusted off up here. Don't even think I showed you, but I did get this with it as well. It's not exactly in great shape, but still looks a little more complete with this on here. Right, let's give it a go. All right, guys, it runs and drives. I am really happy with this, and all the gears that I tried out worked as well. I did have a feeling that one hole was gonna get pretty muddy. It has been raining a lot lately, but it's a Unimog. I couldn't help it. We had to try something like that. And I honestly thought I was done for when I realized I didn't have lockers, but hey, it got itself out of there anyway. Even though it's so rough, I'm immediately liking this thing. But I'm not gonna do a whole lot more driving in this right now. It is really sketchy to roll around in this with no brakes, and also with that sticking throttle. There is a few things we have to fix before we can play around with this some more. Should also fix that diff lock, and perhaps just check out the entire drivetrain as well. Make sure it's all good. Look at all those old round cap Unimogs. That makes me really happy. But I gotta say, because this purchase happened the way that it did, I don't really have an actual plan for this thing. I'm not entirely sure what I'm gonna put on the back of it. I'm pretty sure we have the heavy suspension pack on this. That would make sense if they were running this with a crane. But yeah, you know, I'm open to suggestions, so let me know in the comments what would be a cool thing to do or build with this. But I gotta be honest, I am not gonna start doing a bunch of work to this for quite some time, because I have just started that workshop project. But hey, once that's all done, these kinds of projects should hopefully be much more doable. Anyway, I am going to end this video off here, but let me know what you think of this thing. Was it even worth saving? Thanks for watching along, and I'll see you in the next one.